I've always been jealous of those people that can have that big cup of coffee after dinner. We all know those people, right? Like you go to a restaurant, you're sitting there with some friends or grandparents or something, and the waiter comes by and is like, can I bring you any dessert or coffee or anything like that? And I'm thinking like coffee, and people will just be like, yeah, I'll have a cup of coffee or I'll have an espresso. And it's 8 o'clock at night, and I'm just thinking, how is that even possible? I would love to be able to do that. Heck, even decaf seems like it would wire me up with the small amount of caffeine that's left in decaf. Point is that there's some ways to get caffeine out of your system really, really, really fast. Particularly this compound called Rutaecarpine, which I'm going to talk about. And I've talked about it in other videos in other ways, but this is a way to use it so that you can still sleep after having caffeine. Let's go ahead and break it down. As you know, on this channel, one of the ways this channel stays functioning and alive is through our sponsors. And I want to make a mention that a sponsor that I have talked about for a very long time on my channel, Thrive Market, this is why I like them. Okay, that's a 30% off discount link down below for Thrive Market. But Thrive Market does not have food products that have food coloring added to them, that have preservatives added to them. They are as close to shopping like you're shopping in Europe as you can get. They really do vet every single product that is on their grocery store shelf, even though it's online. Okay, they even make their own products to make sure that the standards are high enough. That's the point. It's not about processed food versus not processed food. It's about how do we up the standard and have a place where people can get good quality food that they can trust, that has good quality ingredients, that's sustainable, that's resourceful, and can also be at a very decent price that's competitive with what they would find in a grocery store. So that link down below is for Thrive Market. Again, that's a 30% off discount link your entire first grocery order. So that whole first grocery order, 30% off, plus a free $60 gift. Not to mention it's easy to shop there because you can search by diet type. Point is that I wish the real grocery stores were like Thrive Market, because Thrive Market has online grocery store like shopping in Europe. Granted, there's still not the same amazing things you can get in Europe, but it's a heck of a lot better. So I highly recommend you check them out. That link is down below, just beneath this video in the top line of the video description. So there's a study published in Biomolecules and Therapeutics that took a look at this new compound called Rutaecarpine, and they found that it completely abolished the negative effects from caffeine on sleep. One of the main ways that it does this is when we consume caffeine, caffeine will make it so that we are basically inhibiting the effects of what is called GABA. GABA is a neurotransmitter and is what is known as an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Okay, so an inhibitory neurotransmitter means it blocks the excitatory actions. So if something amps you up and gets you like overstimulated, GABA is what counters that. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So essentially what happens is caffeine limits the action of GABA. So you no longer have the inhibitory effects. So you're extra amped up. That's why sometimes when you have caffeine, you feel like you can go, and sometimes you have caffeine and you feel like you're gonna spin out. And that's exactly why if you were to have caffeine, you would probably have a hard time falling asleep, because GABA is very important for sleep. That's why so many sleep aids utilize GABA to help us relax. Interestingly enough, they also noticed that Rutaecarpine just decreased excitability from caffeine. So it made it so that caffeine was almost just a little bit uplifting, but you didn't get like the over-the-top excitability. But really what's going on more than anything, and this is something I've talked about in other topics before, is that Rutaecarpine and Apigenin both, they accelerate the metabolism of caffeine. So they can 3x, it 3x's what is called CYP1A2, CYP1A2, but also CYP2E1, which are enzymes. And these enzymes are in our liver, and they're a category of enzymes called CYP enzymes. And if you've ever heard about people that are fast metabolizers of caffeine versus slow metabolizers of caffeine, it has to do with that family of enzymes. And we all have a different amount of these enzymes, but if you increase the availability of these particular enzymes, it changes how quickly you metabolize caffeine. Metabolizing caffeine is as much as like, hey, how long do I have a prolonged effect from it, compared to like, it's in and out of my system fast. These things can upregulate depending on how much caffeine you consume and whatnot, but there's also just a bio-individual aspect to it. That's why there are people that can have caffeine at night and metabolize it fast and go to bed in an hour. If I had caffeine at night, I would not be able to go to bed for like 6 hours, maybe 8 hours, right? I have personally tried Rutaecarpine, and I have noticed that when I take 300 to 400 milligrams of it, I can have a cup of coffee about 3 hours before bed and sleep like a rock. So much so that now I have experimented taking Rutaecarpine even independent of caffeine, because I've noticed that it has a profound effect on my sleep. And when looking at the literature, there's rodent model literature that supports it having an effect on what is called a 5-HT, 5-hydroxytryptophan receptor, which has to do with serotonin uptake. Here's what's wild, is that Rutaecarpine is technically a cyclooxygenase enzyme 2, a COX-2 inhibitor, which means it acts very similarly to like an ibuprofen or an aspirin on the inflammatory system, but not so much like on our gut, right? So it can actually reduce inflammation in the brain and in the body that might help us just sleep better in general. So quite a fascinating compound in that respect. But by far, the most powerful effect is that 3x increase in the CYP1A2 and CYP2E1. And the fact that there is literature to support that it can increase caffeine metabolism, get rid of literally 75% of the caffeine like that, like really quick. What you would want to do is, if you knew you were going to have caffeine in the afternoon or evening, it's best to have the Rutaecarpine in your system already. So if you're to take Rutaecarpine sort of as damage control, it's going to take a little while to build up in your system. So you'd want to have the Rutaecarpine, say, 2 hours or so before, 3 hours or so before, because it can build up in your system. That's going to put you at the best situation where it's already high in your system, it's already upregulated those CYP enzymes, so then you have the caffeine and you could pretty much go right to sleep. And there's evidence to suggest that it actually is quite restorative sleep. So you're not just like, hey, this is damage control, I could kind of sleep. It's like, no, you could have this coffee, have this caffeine. Now, this could also make it so that if you like the taste of energy drinks, right? Like, I'm not a big energy drink guy, but let's say you want to have an energy drink, or if you want to work out in the afternoon, right? Like you want to have, like, it's like, I want to have a pre-workout that has the stuff in it, but I want to be able to come down from it, right? I want to work out in the evening. I want to take a pre-workout and get that energy, or have an energy drink. Maybe you're one of these people. If you were to take Rutaecarpine, like co-ingest it when you take that caffeine, you're going to be able to have the uplift for your workout. And then by the time your workout's done, Rutaecarpine is going to start taking an effect, and you actually come down a lot faster. So you can shorten the life of the caffeine and make it pretty effective. And it's a dirt cheap compound that I have no fiduciary obligation to, no relationship with Rutaecarpine. I'm not getting paid by Chinese tree companies, because it does come from a Chinese tree. One other thing that you can also add, like I mentioned, is Apigenin. Apigenin also increases the CYP1A2. So if you combine Rutaecarpine and Apigenin seems to work faster, but Rutaecarpine seems to be more effective. So when you combine these two, you might put yourself in a spot where you get a rapid deceleration of that caffeine sort of bump up, right? So overall, it's a nice little way to play around with it. You could also take it in the morning just so that you can decrease your caffeine tolerance. You can take a little bit each day, increase a little more, so eventually you're kind of coming off the caffeine without actually cutting out the coffee. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you tomorrow.